Hi folks, welcome to my channel. Um, my last video, only 2 days ago, was a brief look at my reading for the first 3 months. Today I'm going back to a book haul. I'm afraid I've gone rather mad again over the recent weeks, and in the last couple of weeks I've had 3 or 4 bundles of books from eBay arrive in the house, and I've got 3 or 4 more bundles coming later this week. So I thought I'd show you what I've got so far. There's about 40 odd books here, so we'll have to move through them probably fairly quickly. Right, first 3 here aren't actually science fiction or fantasy books. The first one is a crime novel, The Crossroads by John D. MacDonald. Now, I've never read any John D. MacDonald, but I know he's a highly rated crime author. And this is a nice old pan edition in good condition from 1965. So I'll look forward to giving that a read. Horror is probably my favorite genre. So in one of these all came in a bundle of science fiction books, by the way, is this novel Slugs by Sean Hudson, a novel of mind-shattering horror. They slime, they use, they kill. It's a great synopsis on the back. One female slug can lay 1.5 million eggs a year, a fact which holds terrifying consequences for the people of Merton. As the town basks in the summer heat, a new breed of slug is growing and multiplying. In the waist-high grass, in the dank, dark cellars, they are acquiring new tastes, new cravings for blood, for flesh, human flesh. How can you resist? I must admit, Hudson was, when I was heavily into horror and particularly writers like King and Ramsey Campbell back in the late 70s, early 80s. Hudson was an author I was a bit sniffy about. I thought it would be just low-grade trash. But I think that, that's doing him a disservice. I think these are just generally good fun. And another horror book. This is The Dark Dominion, 8 Terrifying Tales of Vampires and Werewolves. This is a paperback library original from 1970. And to be honest, I don't know the writers in here, apart from Lafcadio Hearn, who I think writes books with either a Japanese theme or setting. But nice little anthology. Right, on to the science fiction. And first up, we have obviously Frank Herbert and his novel The Green Brain. Herbert, obviously famous for Dune. That's an iconic cover you see in quite a lot of books on science fiction art, a great cover. It's a story of unique terror. There are no evil aliens. The enemy is of Earth, a tiny enemy, easily destroyed by the flick of a finger when isolated, but when combined, no power can stand against it. I think the cover gives you a clue as to what that might be. This is New English Library edition from 1979. And we have another Frank Herbert novel, The Dosadi Experiment, Futura volume from 1979. Up next, Brian Aldiss, one of the major British writers of science fiction, with his, is this a novel or a short story? It's a novel. Sorry, The Dark Light Years. And this one is from 1975. Again, New English Library. Then we have C.S. Lewis, obviously famous for the Narnia stories. He did write this a trilogy. I can't remember what the trilogy is called, but it is a trilogy of science fiction stories set on Venus. This is the second of that trilogy. The first was Out of the Silent Planet, then have Voyage to Venus, and then the third one was That Hideous Strength. I've never read any of these. I did read the Narnia books when I was younger, loved them. First published in 1943. This is a 16th printing from 1976. Now, for me, I think possibly science fiction hits its height in the short story format, and I love my anthologies. So I managed to pick up a bundle of anthologies off eBay. And the first are 4 in the series of the year's best science fiction, as edited by Harry Harrison and Brian Aldiss. This is number 2, which contains stories from 1968, and you get stories by Robert Sheckley, Bob Shaw, Isaac Asimov, Fritz Leiber, Robert Silverberg, Theodore Sturgeon. I've got another couple in this series. I've got 4 here. I've got another couple. This is the problem when you're a completist. You start getting 1 or 2 in the series, you've got to buy the rest. I don't even know how many there are in that series, to be honest, how long that series went on for. Then we have volume 3. This is 1969. The stories are from, and you get Brian Aldiss, J.G. Ballard, Algis Budrys, Philip K. Dick, Ursula K. Le Guin, Frederick Paul, and others. The next one does away with the number. This is the year's best SF from 1972, but this will be volume 6. It's a great cover. I like that. And this one has people like Harry Harrison again, Keith Roberts, Christopher Priest, Brian Aldiss. Finally, in this series anyway, volume 7, so this is best short stories of 1973, and this has stories by Robert Sheckley, Thomas M. Dish, Silverberg, Lafferty, and Gene Wolfe, among others. Right, next anthology, Analog 1. This is an early Panther edition, edited by John W. Campbell himself. When was this from? This is a 1969 edition and contains stories by Lloyd Biggle Jr. and Gordon Dixon, Sterling Lanier, and some others that I've never heard, like Teddy Keller, T.R. Fehrenbach, Winston P. Sanders. It's always interesting to see stories by authors you've never heard of. Next, Century of Science Fiction, edited by Damon Knight. Damon Knight, a writer in his own right, and best, I think, known as an editor. This is quite 400 pages of sort of going through the history of science fiction at that point. It's an early Pan edition from 1963, and it's split into sections. First one is robots, so you obviously get a Asimov story. You then have time travel, which includes a selection from The Time Machine by Wells. Space, with The Star by Arthur C. Clarke as one of the stories. You then get Other Worlds and People, Aliens Among Us, Superman, and Marvelous Inventions, which includes selection from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. Next up, there were these two volumes of the Hugo winners, 1963 to 1967 and 1968 to 1970, edited by Asimov himself. I love those covers. I think they're really striking, psychedelic. 63 to 67 includes, classics like The Dragon Masters by Jack Vance, Soldier Astronaut by Gordon R. Dixon, Repent Harlequin Said the TikTok Man by Harlan Ellison, Neutron Star by Larry Niven, and 68 to 70 has famous stories like Riders of the Purple Wage by Philip Jose Farmer, Gonna Roll the Bones by Fritz Leiber, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream by Harlan Ellison, Night Wings by Robert Silverberg, and another Ellison one, The Beast That Shouted Love at the Heart of the World. I don't know how many different anthologies there are covering the Hugo winners. I've probably got a few. There's probably a lot of repetition in there, but they have to be bought. Next up, the English writer, who I think eventually went off to Canada, Michael G. Coney. I've not read any of his novels. In fact, I didn't know of him until recently. It's not one that I came across back in the day. And this is his novel, Mirror Image. Spine's a bit faded, but who cares? Well, I do to an extent. So like I say, I've not read anything by him. If you know what he's like, let me know. We then have another anthology with a quite striking cover, I think. Things. Stories of Terror and Shock by 6 science fiction greats, edited by Ivan Howard. So this is from 1965, and you get stories by James Blish, Paul Anderson, Lester Del Rey, and Damon Knight, among others. Right. Tales of Known Space, the universe of Larry Niven. Known Space being his universe that he sets a lot of his stories in. This is a collection of short stories. It's put out by Del Rey in 1975. And then an author I've got quite a few books now by, and that's Bob Shaw. And this is a Pan paperback, The Two Timers. It's a time travel story, I think, or one of alternate parallel worlds. Like I say, I've got quite a few now by Shaw. The only one I think I read back in the day was Orbitsville, which I think I remember enjoying, but he's high up on the list of authors I need to get to fairly soon. This one is from 1969. Right, moving on. We have a collection of short stories by Keith Laumer, 9 by Laumer. I'm not sure I've read any Laumer before, but he's a famous name. This one is published by Sphere and is from 1970. And here we have yet another Bob Shaw novel. Novel. The Shadow of Heaven. Claustrophobia is a crime and agoraphobia is a social asset for the people who live in the shadow of heaven. A terrifying novel of the future. So, this is by Corgi and was published in 1978. We then have a Penguin science fiction edition of Clifford D. Simak's Time and Again, with this striking cover by Alan Aldrich, isn't it? Yeah, Alan Aldrich. I've always enjoyed what I've read of Clifford D. Simak's work in the past. So I think from the sound of it and from the title, this must be a time travel novel. First published in 1951. This is a 1967 edition. Like I say, I love that cover. One of the recent hauls I showed was a whole bunch of Poul Anderson books that I managed to pick up. This wasn't among those, so I was quite pleased to add to my collection of his books. I've still not read him. He's another one like with Shaw that's up at the top of the ones I need to get to. And this is Let Spacemen Beware, published by Tandem in 1969. Murray Leinster, Invaders of Space. Again, a Tandem book from 1968. Back to the anthologies, and we have this one from Foursquare, which became New English Library, I think. And this is an ABC of science fiction, edited by Tom Boardman Jr. And as the title suggests, it goes from A to Z, so you starts off with stories by Brian Aldiss, Frederick Brown, Arthur C. Clarke, goes all the way down to Roger Zelazny at the end. And in between you get stories by people like Philip Jose Farmer, Harry Harrison, Damon Knight, Fritz Leiber, Frederick Paul, and Clifford Simak, and Kurt Vonnegut Jr. and John Wyndham. You even get an X by B.T.H. Xerxes. Now, I've got a feeling that must be a pseudonym, I don't know, but all it is 3 limericks. I was wondering how they managed to get X in there, but it should be good fun to read. When was this one? Yeah, this is an early book, 1966. Another author that I've never read, but is so prolific, is Piers Anthony. I think a lot of his stuff is more in the fantasy vein. but this is a science fiction novel, Rings of Ice, by Fontana, from 1977. Another striking sort of Japanese style cover. The cover illustration by Peter Tybus, not an artist I've heard of, but like I say, that's quite striking. We then have what is termed a magazine, Far Frontiers. This is, I think, the first edition of this magazine, but it's in paperback format, edited by Jerry Pournelle and Jim Bain. This came out in 1985 and is a selection of fiction and non-fiction. So you get stories by Jerry Pournelle himself, David Brin, Ben Bova, Norman Spinrad, Damon Knight, and Greg Bear, among others. I don't know how long this lasted for and how many there are. But it's another one that since I've started, I'm going to have to try and find the others. It's a sad world. Next up are 5 books from the Pan Lozenge series of books. These I'm starting to collect. I don't go out, go out looking for them, but if I see them, I like to pick them up. Question, does anybody know if there's a list online of all the books that Pan produced in this livery? Be interested to know and how many there are. I've got quite a few now, but I'm sure there's tons to go. And we start with another Bob Shaw, and this is A Wreath of Stars. Now this is one I've got in another edition somewhere. This is part of the problem. You start collecting books in the same book in different editions, and you end up keeping both. It's sad, I know. Well, this looks like I love that cover again. Looks like ghosts in a tunnel or a mine. When is this from? This is from 1978. We then have yet another Bob Shaw one. Told you I've got quite a few. This is Who Goes Here? I think this is a comedic novel which stars the main character with the great name of Warren Peace. This will probably be from about the same time. This is 1977. We then have Frederick Poe, famous name, most famous I think for the novel Gateway. And this is a collection of short stories, Day Million. Again, striking cover. Don't know who that's by. Probably should do. And this is from 1979. Again, recently, when I showed the Paul Andersons, I showed a whole collection of Robert Heinlein books that I managed to get. This one wasn't one of them, surprisingly. This is The Green Hills of Earth. This is the second book in the Future History series, and is a series of 10 short stories in this one. had to be bought, even if this one had been in the other bundle of Heinlein work. This had to be bought because it's a lozenge edition. From 1975. Can't speak today. 1977. The short stories go back to 1954. And finally, of these lozenge ones, Robert Holstock, this is his very first novel, I Among the Blind. Holstock I know for his book Mythical Wood, which is considered a sort of fantasy classic. Not one which I've ever actually read. It's one I really should try and get a hold of a copy. But as I said, this is his first novel from 1976. Still some to go. We next have Alfred Bester, and this is a short story collection, Starlight, Star Bright, produced by Fontana. This is part of a 2-volume set. This is the second volume. The first volume I have, which is The Light Fantastic, and collects together the best of his short fiction. Bester, obviously known for the novels The Demolished Man and Tiger, which was better known in the States as The Star's My Destination. But these 2 volumes of short stories are highly recommended. So I'm looking forward to getting to those. Another author that's got to be high up in the TBR. We then have a couple of Frederick Paul ones. And this is one of his more famous novels, I think. The Age of Pussyfoot. This is a Panther paperback. I think this is a story of a guy from 1969 who's cryogenically frozen and woken up in the year 2527. And another, I think, that's quite well known by Frederick Paul is Gem. This is a later book, I think. No, 1979. Oh, 1980 book. So not that much later, I thought it was. The 21st century facts of life are simple. The greases produce oil, the fats produce food, the peeps produce people, and that's how it must stay. 3 massive blocks, each dependent on the other 2, all surviving in uneasy nuclear peace. And another Paul. This one is Alternating Currents. This is a Penguin science fiction volume. There's the guy himself, I take it. And I think this is a collection of short stories. First published in the USA in 1956. This is 66 reprint by Penguin. And Paul again, but this time as an editor. This is the 7th Galaxy Reader. I've got about 2 or 3 in this collection. Again, being a completist, I need to get them all, but I don't know how many there are. I'm going to have to check on that. This is an early Pan edition from 1967. And you get stories by some of my favourites like Robert Bloch, Ray Bradbury, Frederick Brown, 3 of my favourites, Fritz Leiber, Cordwainer Smith, Keith Laumer, Damon Knight, R.A. Lafferty. So good selection there. Sticking with anthologies. Is that a cover by, what's his name? I've forgotten his Anyway, Exiles, edited by Ben Bover, and it's just 3 novellas. Gypsy by Paul Anderson, and then there were none by Eric Frank Russell, and Profession by Isaac Asimov. And this is from 1977. Excellent condition, that one. This next one was shown just recently by Kenny, channel Kenny RH, Kenny House, looking at the, some great covers that he really likes. And this was one that stood out to me as well. Don't know who the, it's the design is by Tony DiStefano. Whether he's the artist as well, I don't know. But this is a Van Vogt novel, Master of Time. Van Vogt's one of those writers who's I've read quite a few short stories by, and 1 or 2 novels way back. Always enjoyed his work. This is by Manor Books. I don't think I know of. And it's from 1975. Yeah, and that is a striking cover. I really do like that. Another Piers Anthony, and this is Step. It sounds like science fantasy. Sounds a bit like Edgar Rice Burroughs. Alp is a 9th century warrior on the great steppes of Russia, suddenly plucked from his own timeline by 24th century galactics, players of the game. This is a Panther book from 1976. Coming up over half an hour already. Don't worry, we're down to the last half dozen or so. Clifford D. Simak. This is a collection of short stories printed by Magnum. So Bright, The Vision. As I said, I've liked Simak's work that I've read in the past. Stuff like Way Station. This is just 4 short stories. Another anthology, Anti-Grav, edited by Philip Strick, not a name I recognise, produced by Arrow in 1975. And we have stories by Stanislaw Lem, Theodore Sturgeon, James Blish, Brian Aldiss, John Sladek, Harry Harrison, Barry N. Malzberg, Ron Goulart, and others. There you go. And one of the most famous magazines of science fiction ever produced was New Worlds, the UK science fiction magazine. This is one of the quarterlies that were produced. I think there's 10 volumes of these. This is at the time, number 4. That was at the time of when Michael Moorcock was editing the magazine. I've got about 3 or 4 of these out of the 10 already, so another one I'm looking to try and complete. This would be from 1972, and you get stories by Keith Roberts, Thomas M. Dish, John Sladek, M. John Harrison, among others. In fact, the Dish one is story 334, which I wonder if that's a shortened or a full version of the book he brought out himself. Don't know, but New Worlds. Oh, we're back with Frederick Paul. One of the bundles had about half a dozen Paul books, and this is a collection of short stories by him, Digits and Dastards. produced by Corgi in 1971. Last two, and I was really pleased to get this one. This is Isaac Asimov's The Caves of Steel. Now, I think this is one of the very first in his robot series of novels, if not the first, which I was really pleased to pick up. This wasn't in the bundle of Asimov stuff that I got recently. I think I now have all of the books in the Robot and Empire series, which the two series which actually sort of converged. I just need now to work out the best reading order. Though I read a lot of, I don't know if I read this one, but I read a lot of the Robots stories back in the day. This is a very early Panther edition from 1964, in decent condition. And finally, you'll be glad to know, a more modern volume, but this is the Collected Stories of Werner Vinge. And it is Vinge. I used to always say Werner Vinge, but I saw a YouTube video of him on a panel, science fiction writers panel, and they introduced him as Werner Vinge. And this is, as it says, is a collection of his short stories by Souvenir Press from 2001. So can't be classed as vintage, this edition. I've never read any Werner Vinge, but have a couple now of his books, and he is highly rated. So there you go. Sorry for this one to be such a long video again. I hope you saw something of interest in there. If you've read any of these, please let me know what you thought of them. I'd be really pleased to know. Like I say, I've got another 3 or 4 bundles coming this week. I've yet to tackle the boxes of stuff that I want to show you from last year or earlier in this year, which will eventually be shelved when I get my new shelves. And I also want to finish off my overview of what I've read in the second quarter of this year. So thanks to everybody who's watched and commented on my videos. I hope to see you all again soon. Take care. All the best.